Lighten up your touch, unclench your hand, straighten up your spine, take command, open up your eyes, find your smile, ready, set, go, it's a brand new mile, it's a brand new mile, a brand new day, follow your heart and be on your way. Pull your shoulders back, lift your chin, take a breath, time to begin. Hold your head up high, feel the power flow. It's a brand new mile, ready, set, go. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. Follow your heart and be on your way.
Well, welcome. What could be better than a brand new day and a brand new mile? And this, of course, is a famous 5 Friday. So women have more power and see more opportunities. So Fridays are famous 5 Fridays. And we thank you very much for joining us today and being welcomed by yet another magnificent song by Carolyn Harley. Of course, as much as I like this song, I love her Ballad of the Famous Five and Spirit of the Famous Five, which many of you now know and enjoy singing as a way of encouragement too, because we have to keep going. The world is ready for more women's leadership. And last night I had the pleasure, the honor of hearing the Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon, speak at a La Fontaine Baldwin lecture about citizenship. And it was organized by the organization Institute for Canadian Citizenship that a former Governor General, Adrienne Clarkson, and her husband, John Ralston Saul, have started. So it was an evening full of fabulous messages of inspiration, but of seeing proud, capable women leaders, and the world really needs more women leaders. And I will just leave you with the word that the Governor General said when she visited us in March of this year, and the word was ayunata. It means never give up, never give up. And so we say this when we're struggling and frustrated. gives us a little more courage to go on, like the famous five had courage. And I particularly want to do a shout out to the women of Iran. So if sometime over this weekend of Thanksgiving, for all the rights and privileges that we Canadian women have, because other women have enabled these rights and privileges to come our way, together with, of course, good-hearted men or smart men. Take a moment to send thoughts of encouragement to the women of Iran, and perhaps figure out how you or your family, your organization can help them. Women leaders, of course, have been a key part of our Indigenous life in Canada. And for tens of thousands of years, Indigenous women have been leading Canada and still are. And of course, one of the major themes from the Governor General's speech last night was reconciliation. And so this land acknowledgement is in support of reconciliation, because as we now know, reconciliation is going to be a process and something that's going to happen for a number of probably generations. But luckily, there are some fabulous leaders amongst us, many of them Indigenous and many of them young and coming along, and it is up to us to support them. Well, who's been supporting us for a number of years as the famous Five Foundation? Enbridge has. Enbridge has been our fine partner now for 25 years, and we are most grateful to Enbridge. And at each virtual pink tea, Enbridge sends us one of their female leaders to introduce the panel and to also bring a message. Today we have Lynn McMurtry. Lynn is the manager of internal communications and also corporate citizenship. She leads a team of strategic communicators, event planners, and of course, community investment professionals. Prior to joining Enbridge, Lynn was a reporter, and one of her key focuses was diversity inclusion. Although I'm here in Calgary and you're all across Canada, some of you will be in Toronto, where Lynn is, and she's living there with her partner and two daughters. And they are being thoughtfully and skillfully herded by their border collie, Jack. And so now it's time for Lynn to mirror Jack and to introduce our panel and skillfully herd us into our virtual pink tea of today. So thank you very much, friends, for coming. I'll be back a little later. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Frances, and hello, everyone. I'm honored to be here with you today. Enbridge exists to fuel quality of life in the communities where we live, work, and operate. We energize communities through the volunteerism and generosity of our employees and through investments and partnerships that strengthen safety, vibrancy, and sustainability. We're also committed to building diverse and inclusive workplaces where people are empowered to bring their true selves to work every day. Enbridge is pleased to collaborate with community leaders and organizations like the Famous Five Foundation to help build capacity and to bring out the very best in people. So now I'm thrilled to introduce today's panel. One glass ceiling that has been completely shattered is the office of Lieutenant Governor of our provinces. 8 of the 10 Lieutenant Governors are women, and today we are very pleased to have one of the former Lieutenant Governors of Saskatchewan joining us. The 19th Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, Lynda Haverstock, grew up in Swift Current and left high school to raise her infant daughter. Returning to school as an adult, Ms. Haverstock earned a PhD in psychology, became the MLA for Saskatoon Greystone, and then a radio host. She also served as a CEO of Tourism Saskatchewan and on major corporate boards. In 2005, Lieutenant Governor Haverstock oversaw Saskatchewan's centennial celebrations, which involved several official and working visits by Queen Elizabeth II and members of her family. This provided many opportunities to interact with the Queen and her family, as well as to evaluate the relationship between the Crown and Canada. In 1953, Clarice Siebens of Calgary was one of 51 lucky girls from across Canada chosen to attend the Queen's coronation, thanks to Loblaw's owner, Garfield Weston. The talented actor and generous arts supporter says that trip literally changed her life. As the Alberta Bureau Chief for CTV National News, Janet Dirks has also studied our former monarch, her family, and the monarchy over the years. In addition to her journalism training and expertise, her perspective is also based on her legal training as a lawyer. This award-winning journalist admires the teamwork that was clearly evident between Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, and is pleased to report that she saw evidence of the same fine partnership with the new Prince and Princess of Wales. And so, to learn more about Queen Elizabeth, her relationship with Canada, and why lieutenant governors are critically important to Canada's democracy, it's over to you, Janet.
Thank you so very much, Lynn. I very much appreciate your very generous introduction. So thank you, Lynn. And thanks to all of you for joining us today on this Friday for our virtual pink tea. I'm so pleased to be here with Lynda Haverstock in Saskatchewan and Clarice Siebens also in Calgary, as we discuss encounters with the Queen, lessons learned from the Queen, and the role of a constitutional monarch. I couldn't think of two better people to discuss this with. So I'd like to begin by asking you, Lynda, as Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, you met the Queen on a few occasions. Can you take us to when you first met her at Buckingham Palace and explain what that, or tell us what that was like?
Unnerving. It was very, very exciting. When my husband and I arrived in London, we were very, very nervous, as one could well imagine. Meeting the human who has met every significant leader of the world, all the cultural icons. It was with great anticipation when the gates opened and the footman let us in, that we awaited being called to have our private audience with Her Majesty. We were let into a room, entered through a door that had high doors, as tall as I'd ever seen. And there she was. She looks much smaller than I had imagined. And she was gracious. We thought we would simply have a 15 or 20-minute discussion with her, but it went on and no one else in the room. And she showed us her extraordinary sense of humor, her incredible memory. She remembered details of people with whom she had had meetings in Saskatchewan, visited on farms, everything. It was an extraordinary opportunity to get some insights into her. So we felt very, very fortunate indeed. That was our first encounter.
Can I just ask, I know Maya Angelou once said, it's not what people do or what people say, it's how people make you feel. So how did the Queen make you feel?
Well, honestly, I thought she was quite taken with my husband. and I found the two of them so engaged in conversation that it was a pleasure to watch her in this interaction with him. I had things that I did want to say to her about Saskatchewan. And interestingly enough, given some of our conversation and what preceded what happened today, one of the conversations was about what was going to be my gift to her, which was related to, in her name, providing a gift to the reading program at the women's prison, which is 80% First Nations women, which made such a huge difference in their lives. So instead of taking her something that was like what other people would take her, that would be a creation of an artist or whatever, I wanted her to know how meaningful this program was and to gift in her name something to them. So that was, it moved her and it mattered to me. So it was precious to me that I got to spend that time with her and see her reactions and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Now, Clarice, you had the honor of attending the Queen's coronation in 1953 because you were part of a very special exclusive group of about 50 girls in grade 12 from across Canada who were sent as part of a special initiative by Garfield Weston of Loblaws. And you went on this all expense paid, I guess, tour. Can you take us to London in 1953 and describe what that experience was like for you?
It was absolutely amazing. I'd never been out of Alberta, and nor did I have any idea this was happening till I got a letter from Garfield Weston, who was telling me I had been selected. Now, apparently my parents did know because they had to give permission. And my mother, first time I ever saw her cry when I opened that letter and I had been chosen. There were 50 of us from right across Canada, according to population, 3 from Alberta, 3 from Saskatchewan, 4 from BC, 12 from Ontario, and Yukon and Northwest Territories were also. So I got to know, I really became a Canadian on that trip. I got to know people right across the country. We went by train all the way across, then by boat. And then for the and there were 50 British girls that he sent to Canada, but they were with us at the coronation. And it was amazing. We had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and we went to our stands, which had been built over a restaurant on Oxford Street. And the 100 girls, the British in red and we were in white, not in blue suits and hats, we had all been assigned seats so that we formed out the letters E to R in the stands. And we watched as Prince Philip touched the Queen in the royal gold, what is it called? The royal
Carriage?
Carriage. There we go. Carriage. I'm getting old. Anyway, and she looked up and waved at us, and it was marvelous. And that whole trip was incredible. But seeing the Queen, we met the Princess Royal. I was a royalist. My dad was from Wales. I was a royalist anyway. I was always interested, and we made scrapbooks of the royal families. But this truly made all of us on that trip royals. We realized how much the monarchy has done for us as a Commonwealth. I feel very close to the Commonwealth countries, that there's a bond that we will always have with those countries, hopefully. But the coronation was brilliant and probably one of the highlights of my life.
What an incredible experience. Now I'm just going to go back to Lynda. Lynda, before you were appointed Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, you were the first female leader of a political party in Saskatchewan, the Liberal Party, although you ended up sitting as an independent in the legislature near the end of your time in politics. In 2000, you were appointed Lieutenant Governor. Can you tell me why you decided to accept that appointment?
Well, first of all, it's an extraordinary privilege to be asked. I am an absolute devotee of my country. I am as pro-Canadian as one can be. I feel that it's important to be open to knowing we're a country as a work in progress. And I also very, very much believe that a constitutional monarchy provides its citizens with the greatest protections. And I think that there's tremendous research that bears that out on areas that people do not believe, okay, like the economy, etc., which there's evidence to show that. So I felt that this was an opportunity to give a different kind of service. Sitting as an independent in the legislature for 4 of my years there simply reinforced in me the need to have people be much more collaborative and rather than partisan. And we need that today, whether it's between provinces and the federal government, whether it is between different political parties in a province. It's not going that direction, but it certainly underlined things for me. And what this position was going to offer me by representing Her Majesty was to do the things that I was doing as an independent member anyway, trying to bring people together for common ends, and especially the opportunity to recognize people who had done exemplary things in volunteerism, in the arts, veterans, First Nations. Everyone would be I would be in a position to be a part of allowing them to be celebrated. The other part to this, and then I'll end, is the constitutional part, because everyone talks about the ceremony of it all and does not talk about the Constitution. Being a strong Canadian, I think we need to know much more about our Constitution, because there are people in positions of power today who are suggesting they will do things that completely undermine our Constitution. So if you're not familiar with it and there's no position in place to protect constitutional rights, this is not good for anyone, and especially the people.
Can you explain, Lynda, what a constitutional monarch is, a constitutional monarchy?
Yes. The Constitution is simply a set of rules that any country puts in place, okay? A monarch is someone who, in our case, we're very fortunate. We have a lineage of 1,000 years with the monarch. And these are, the crown has evolved over time in many ways that politics has not, okay? And so over time, if you go back in history, you'll discover one thing. There was ruthlessness there. And I like to say, well, it's, you know, there's been colonialism throughout time, and it's generally been about men who want power and they go out and they get it, or a peoples that wants freedom and opportunity, so they go elsewhere to find it. But there have been women monarchs in the past who have been brutal as well. But over time, that has all shifted. And they have become, the crown is the overseeing body that protects people, whether you, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, gender, all of it. You are perceived as equal under the crown. So when you look at our system, whether it's crown prosecutors, whether it's, name it all, we have this entrenched in our system of doing things. What is curious to me is how much time has been spent, or lack of time, in having people understand how the crown affects them. So at some point, we need to discuss how people have been protected. And I can give you 2 examples at a later date of how in our province, the people have been protected by the role of the Lieutenant Governor. And equally, I can give you another example from British Columbia. So the people don't know this. They don't know because we don't teach them anything about these roles and how their very, very protections, their constitutional rights have been upheld by Lieutenant Governors in our lifetime.
Okay, you've teased a little. Can you give us one? Can you give us one of those examples? The one in BC or 2 in Saskatchewan? I'd love to hear that. If you want to
talk breaking the glass ceiling, the person I'm going to talk about broke a concrete ceiling. Okay, and that was Dr. Sylvia Fedorik. Sylvia Fedorik was one of the scientists to discover cobalt treatments for cancer. She's in the Hall of Fame in athletics. She was an extraordinary person who became the Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan. We had a government that did not call an election and 5 years was up. They did not table a budget in 2.5 years so that legislators, the people we elect as citizens, they could examine what's going on in the province. And what they required was the signature. These are called special warrants that a lieutenant governor signs, that pay for all the bills, hospitals, education, everything, okay? Well, Dr. Fedoruk, her honor, brought in the premier, Grant Devine, and said, if you do not call an election within the next 2 months, I will. And you should know from this moment on, I will sign no special warrant. That was her job, which is why it's very significant to have premiers meet on a regular basis with premiers and the prime minister meet with the governor general. That's how our system works. That's how it's been made to work. And what people don't know is she would have had the right to call an election. Okay. I mean, as lieutenant governors, we appoint the cabinet, we appoint basically the premier of the province. People don't know how the things work. And so as a result of that, the people's right to vote was protected. Their own economy was protected because the incoming government found that they were a hair's breadth of having to declare bankruptcy. So it is vital that people know these things.
Thank you. Now, Lynda, the Queen visited your province, Saskatchewan, in 2005 for the province's centennial and attended a big arts gala where Joni Mitchell was there and Buffy St. Marie. Of course, you were there. Can you tell us from that experience what you made of the Queen's sense of duty, her commitment, and her knowledge of Canada?
Well, I will preface that it was a small but mighty group that made my vision come to fruition. We had a little group and made sure that we celebrated Saskatchewan and all that our province has been. This is a woman, when I say she has a mind, she had a mind like a steel trap, it is true, okay? We sat in a Queen's box, which I wanted to honor sculptors, so we recreated the sculpture of Joe Fafard that he had in the University of Regina grounds, and we sat there together, the Duke of Edinburgh, myself, my husband, and Her Majesty. And it wasn't just that occasion that reinforced her unbelievable determination to do everything. I'm going to give a sidebar. Imagine this woman had 4 children. She never stopped any of her activities through her pregnancies. She never stopped doing anything the day after she was pregnant. She carried out unbelievable numbers of things, so endless. No one really comprehends what she did, and going to hospices, all these quiet little things. So here I had before me an individual who exemplified determination. It isn't just a sense of duty. She physically embodied what it was to live values. And I think these values matter. So what was so remarkable was I had indicated to her about all of these different people, the actor Leslie Nielsen, Greg Butts of Corner Gas, all these different people. And she went across that stage, remembered every single thing I said about each person. And she said, thank you to them, and mentioned something personal. Now that to me is extraordinary. It's one thing to have the ability to do it. It's another to be determined to do it, to be other oriented like that.
I really noticed her sense of duty on the few world tours I covered, or portions of world tours, because it's the rare reporter that will cover them from coast to coast. those royals really go at a hectic pace when they're on a tour. So this was in 2010. It was the Queen's last visit to Winnipeg, and they sent me there from Calgary. And the Queen was opening. She was going to be the official first visitor to the James Richardson Airport, the new terminal. Well, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, were the first to arrive, and it was not glamorous. There was sawdust on the floor, there were cables, there were boards. One reporter described it as a sweltering construction site. It was bad, and the Queen was not best pleased. Now, we could not report at the time what the Queen said to Prince Philip, but I'm gonna spill it now. She said, "It's not finished. It's not finished." And Prince Philip jollied her up. He made jokes. He added some levity. So by the time the Queen met the dignitary, she was back to herself, composed and professional and on. And I wonder if the Queen ever got tired of all those sessions, of all those events. Was it ever a burden to her at all, do you think, Lynda?
I think that, well, if she was like me, they invigorated her. I mean, that's a rather strange thing to say if she were like me, but I know that I only did, well, I shouldn't say only, about 400 events a year. That didn't include meetings and the like. It was actual events. And I can tell you that I was invigorated by each one. Just when I felt I had nothing else left to give, I would walk in and suddenly realize what a marvelous opportunity this was to be at this event with these people. Even if it were to go in because someone was having a 100th birthday, and this individual was very, very committed to the crown and all sorts of things, and everything was so, I don't know how to say it, but I know that there have to have been many, many times when, especially when her life didn't stop, there were real challenges in her life, but she made others be more important than herself. And I think that there were instances where I saw what a role the Duke of Edinburgh played in her life, because he had such an amazing sense of humor. And the things that he would say to, you know, there were protesters about killing bears at one place. And I mean, the way in which he dealt with it was so humorous that she would just chuckle. You know, you could see the levity in her because of him. And so I think that they were so well matched. She loved him since she was a child. And I think that, you know, the two of them made an incredible, incredible pair.
A wonderful team. I'd like to ask Clarice about an experience you had with the Queen. We're now jumping to 1988 from 1953. So the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, were in Calgary in 1988. And you met the Queen after that in, I think, June of 1988 in London. The Queen remembered the Winter Olympics. Can you tell us about your conversation with her when you were in London at that point?
Yes, it was an opening of there's this historical site called Beaver House where all the Canadian furs used to be sent. And some companies, some of them Canadian companies, had joined in to build a high rise over the building. And the Queen was there at the opening, and those people on the board were invited, and with their partners. And so afterwards, we were invited for tea after the grand opening. And they sort of had us divided. There were the banks, and my husband was a part of an oil company board that was involved. And it was wonderful because we were told what to do. We had to call her Your Majesty and then ma'am from that time on. And she came in and talked to the first group that was from Toronto and another group that was from Montreal. And then she came to us. And she said, our group, and she said, are you all from Toronto or Montreal? And I said, no, Your Majesty, we're from Calgary. And she came right over to me, almost conspiratorially, and and Philip was right behind her. And she said, I've been wanting to talk to somebody from Calgary. Were you involved with the Olympics? And I said, yes, pretty well everybody in Calgary was. And she said, well, do you know who I mean when I say our Eddie? I said, oh, yes, Eddie the Eagle. She said, what were they chanting? I said, well, one side of the ski jump were saying Eddie, the other side would answer the Eagle, then it would reverse. It was great fun. And she said, well, were they making fun of him? I said, no. She said, are you sure? And I said, oh, yes, we all thought he was amazing. Every man wants to be in something like the Olympics, but this young man with bad eyesight and everything managed to get into the Olympics, and we all just admired him so much. She said, oh, I'm so glad to hear that. We were quite concerned about it. Then I started to tell her about the coronation, and then her husband, nobody would touch her, but we had chatted also about, was this the only reason I was there? And I told her some other things. And anyway, we just were having this little chat. And so she said, oh, I'm sorry, I have to leave. And you were at my coronation. I said, yes. And I told her about the Weston family a little bit. And so he touched her and she went on. And one of the ladies in our group, who was from Toronto, said, we had 3 cups of tea while you were chatting with the Queen. And I said, well, she kept asking me questions. We couldn't very well be rude, could we?
Of course not.
That's my
The Queen was
experience,
clearly
but
captivated by you, Clarice. That's
it was just-
wonderful.
well, I was captivated by her. She was just so intensely interested in everything and wanted to know, and it was serious. And Philip was right in there leaning, listening. So they'd obviously watched the Olympics, and she's an amazing person. And I also think Charles will be a good king. He
We're
was
going
well
to speak
trained
about
by
that.
the master.
Yes, we're going to speak about that in a few minutes, but first we're going
Okay.
to answer some questions from 2 girls who are students at King David High School in Vancouver. We always do this at these virtual teas. Now, Hannah is in grade 11 and she's interested in psychology. Your question, please, Hannah.
Hi, I just have a question. As the Lieutenant Governor of Saskatchewan, did you ever have ethical or moral dilemmas on signing off on certain laws for the Queen?
Well, Hannah, thank you for that question. It is interesting because there are many, many things that one has to sign. In fact, endless numbers of documents. Some of them are called orders in council, some are called special warrants, and then there are the bills that you sign into law. There was only one occasion where I found it rather repugnant, the legislation. And the good news is that every lieutenant governor has an administrator. Usually these administrators are the chief justices of their respective provinces. In that case, my administrator, the chief justice, signed it. So it is law. I mean, they're wanting it to be law. It's gone through the legislature, and there's a role for the government, and there's a role that they need to carry out. I could not do that in good conscience, and so it was brought into law anyway. I want you to know that what should happen is that a lieutenant governor and a premier meet regularly. This is not happening in many provinces across the country, and that is a serious, serious breach of our form of government. So when one can express, you know, my role as lieutenant governor was to advise, in some instances, like Dr. Sylvia Fedoruk, it was to warn all of these things. These things have been put in place. We're called the fire extinguishers of our system of government, okay? And you don't need a fire extinguisher 99% of the time, but when you do, you'll be very happy that it's there. So I was able to express my concerns about this legislation before it was ever finished in my meeting with the premier. But it came forward anyway, and I managed to be out of the province, and the Chief Justice signed it.
Well, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Hannah, for that question. Now it's Mari's turn. Mari is a singer and a dancer, and she hopes to attend university in California to study business. Mari, what would you like to know?
Hi, my question is, what do you think the monarch's role should be in the Truth and Reconciliation in Canada? Thank you.
Is that question for me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, certainly. I want you to know that it is not only significant, but many, many things that have gone on long before the Truth and Reconciliation paper ever came out. The actions of the monarchy with Indigenous peoples has taken place. Many things, okay? I happen to believe that King Charles III is the best positioned monarch for our times. This is an individual who has been committed for decades to things for which he was criticized and vilified. The environment, built heritage, you name it. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Prince Charles, when he was Prince Charles, had the Prince's Trust. The Prince's Trust also has the Prince's Charity of Canada. And this is a completely, it's all done under the radar. Very few people know in Canada what has happened. But this is what Prince Charles did, our King Charles III now. He, through his organization, paid for books to be written, and it's called The Tale of the Tale, okay? It's written in 8 Indigenous languages. So there's the English, whether it's Dene or Lakota or whatever, and then there is the pronunciation. This is the first time that such materials have been given out for nothing to First Nations families, where children can see the language of their grandpa and grandma, okay? And this has been made available free of cost across the country now for years, okay? So that's number one. This is a gentleman who learned to speak Welsh as the Prince of Wales. And he has gone to different First Nations communities, and he's talked to them about how the Welsh have preserved their language for 1,000 years, okay? For hundreds and hundreds of years, and how it can be utilized to going forward to help them recover their languages. I personally have felt that I have been part of honoring the treaties from the moment I came into being Lieutenant Governor. I had a group of female elders who were my counselors. I met them at the office of the Treaty Commissioner on a regular basis. I visited every First Nation in Saskatchewan, tried to do that throughout the treaty day so that I hit all of them and could be part of the process of giving the obligatory $5, etc. I have given out the first 7 of the 50 centennial medals. I was provided 50 in the province of Saskatchewan. The first 7 went to my elder counselors. And probably what matters most in the long term for me is I was told by Indigenous leaders in the North that the single most important thing they needed was help with animals, with dogs that were attacking children, packs of dogs, not the economy, not housing, but dogs. And so I spent a long time organizing, getting a northern spay and neuter program, which is going to this day. So that is amongst the many things. So I think that we have a role to play. And I think that it's more important in some ways to have an individual who represents another individual, the institution, if you will, of the Crown, that has no agenda. We have no agenda by all of the things that we bring out. Politicians do things often to get a result, not necessarily for the people at large, but our initiatives are done, I think, with very, very good intentions.
Thank you, Lynda, and thank you, Mari, for that question. We were speaking about Prince Charles, and in 2016, I got to cover Kate and William's tour, part of their tour when they went to Whitehorse. And they also went to a community called Carcross, and there I interviewed First Nations carver who had given then Prince Charles a sculpture 15 years previous, and he was very excited about meeting Prince William, now the Prince of Wales. And I asked him why he was so excited, and he said he just adored Prince Charles and how much knowledge Charles had about First Nations art and about his carving and about First Nations history. He said he was just bowled over by that. And he was not a person, this artist, to be a gushing or fawning person. So when he said Prince Charles was incredible and I so enjoyed meeting him, I was taken aback, and I thought, I have to reevaluate Prince Charles. I think I've been judging him for some other things. This made me look at him in a new way. So asking you, Lynda, what do you make about now King Charles and how he will be the new monarch? How will he perform his role?
I really believe that this could be a true guide for our world, which is, in many ways, there's just nothing but turmoil and chaos, okay? In many, many parts of the world, the constancy of the crown matters so much, and showing what he knows. I mean, I want to tell people about a book he wrote, which is also a documentary. It's called Harmony. So he has been so devoted to the environment for so long, so understanding, probably one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet regarding organic agriculture. His entire place called Highgrove does nothing but grow things, they put things online to teach people how to do things organically. It's sustainable because they sell all the goods from there to people. And what is amazing, he said, well, why do people keep saying, well, we can't do that because it'll ruin the economy? Well, we can't do that because it'll ruin the economy. He said, we live in one ecosphere. So let's create and give value to the things that matter, like clean air, clean water, healthy soil, all of these things that now young people realize the future they're going to inherit, okay? And what he did was write this book that gives values to each one of these things. So he said, we can look at the whole equation. We can say, let's allot this amount to having clean air, so our health is not compromised, okay? Because if we don't, this is what it would cost us in healthcare for people to be breathing bad air. And let's allot something to good soil, okay? Because if we don't have good food, this is what it's going to do, okay? And so his entire book and documentary deals with these things. So that's just one snippet, one small part of who this man is. And I say to people, do not be taken off on some strange path in your view of him, because it is not fair and just for anyone to be judged on a particular instance or period of time in your life, regardless of what it is. And I think that people are going to be quite taken with his knowledge, especially. I was so privileged to host 5 royal visits in 6.5 years, and I got real insights into him. I went in with an open mind, and he very, very much impressed me.
Clarice, you met Prince Charles as well. How do you think he will fare as king? Clarice?
Oh, Lynda has said it. I think he's going to be a marvelous king. And because he's ahead of ahead of most of us in getting into the environmental things and doing something about it personally. But when I met him, this was just happenstance. My dad is from Wales, so he's been a royalist for a long time, and we were. So in 1977, we went out to Blackfoot Landing, I think it was called. It's on. I've got it. It's the Siksika peoples and First Nations, and it was the anniversary of some treaty he had come out for, and he was in a teepee, and there were a lot of people around, and it started to have one of those Alberta days where it just suddenly started to rain and hail and everything, and the teepees that they had out, that they were signing these things in, started to blow over. So they were rushing out with Charles to get him out of there. And I guess there was a building somewhere, I don't remember that. And he saw that there were about 5 or 6 of us or 8 left. We were still waiting. And I had wrapped myself in a towel, and he looked and he said, "Stop, I've got to see these people." And he came over and shook each of our hands. And then he said, "Is the weather always like this?" And I said, "Well, we have a saying in Alberta, if you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes." And he laughed and he said, "Well, that seems the case." And then the teepee blew over and they took him off. But I just was so impressed that he stopped, was getting wet like we all were, because he saw these people that were waiting. I think he's an amazing man. I really do. I think he'd be a great king.
Now, we started, Clarice, by asking you about your tour, your opportunity to go to the Queen's coronation in 1953. How important, how much would you like to see someone organize a tour like that to send a group of young people, of Canadian youths, to London for King Charles III's coronation?
Oh, I think it would be wonderful. I think I said somewhere that my checklist, things to do, I'd love to go to that coronation. I at my age, I doubt I will, but I think it would be wonderful if somebody did that. The Westons did 4 of those, and so I don't think, and it's a lot of work. We were 2 months of travel to France and Scotland, England, Northern Ireland. Didn't get into Wales, but I've been there several times to visit relatives now. No, I think that it was absolutely a changing point in my life. And we have reunions. A friend, one of the girls in Ottawa, and I decided in 2003 that we had to get reunions going, because I became obsessed with what happened to these girls. And it was amazing. The first one was in Ottawa, and then we started having them every 2 years. The last one was in Calgary, that a friend, one of the Western girls, and I hosted. And then 2 years later, thinking that was our last one, because we're all in our 80s now. We were all 17 or 18 at the time we went. And the Westons themselves, the four of them had been with us, 2 that were girls that were just because they were the same age, and then 2 that were our leaders. And these reunions have been marvelous. We've kept in touch now with these girls right across Canada. I think that tour made me a true Canadian.
And I'm sure. And I'm just going to ask Lynda, I don't mean to interrupt, so forgive me, but Lynda, what do you think about the idea of sending a group of young people to the coronation of King Charles III?
I think that it is a brilliant idea, and one should approach the family, once again, the Weston family, now that it's young Weston in charge. I think that they would be more than amenable to being at least part of sponsoring such a thing now. I actually think that there are numbers of teachers who should be targeted to go as well, because I don't believe that we have the kind of education program that is going to teach people about our constitutional monarchy. I think that we don't do enough to celebrate sameness in Canada, and that comes at a cost. And I mentioned the other day to people, the Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And we will be very, very sad indeed. It'll be a very sad day if Canada is not strengthened. And that means by looking at the things that we all want. We want safety, we want security, we want a good life for ourselves and our families. We want all the things that are coveted around the world, but today things are much more politically motivated and pulling down of the institutions that others would covet. So I think that teachers and students going to the coronation would help us enormously.
I think you both would be excellent consultants for such a tour. I think Frances would like to join us now. Frances?
Yeah, and Frances sure would like to go to the coronation as well, and enjoy it as Clarice did many years ago. I always feel so guilty about breaking into these virtual pink tea conversations, and today was especially fascinating and joyful. It was a happy discussion by and large, but a very informed discussion. I know a lot more than I did when I started to listen. So it's now our time to say thank you to Janet, Clarice, and Lynda. And because we're at a pink tea, and pink teas, of course, were used by our suffragists to work hard to get the right to vote for women and the right for women also to seek electoral office. I'm hoping you might have a teacup or a mug or something as we toast our three wonderful, wonderful panelists. So let's start with the Honourable Lynda Haverstock. Thank you, Lynda, very much for your superb participation today. I remember about 20 years ago, you kindly accepted another invitation from the famous F5F Foundation. And after you finished speaking, the Crystal Ballroom in the Fairmont Palliser Hotel here in Calgary stood up and cheered. They were so impressed by your acts of leadership, your dedication to the position, and also your clarion call to action. Because you don't just discuss things, you make things happen. And your resilience, your ability to do all this and factor in a personal life as well. So if we may, we'll raise a cup of tea in a toast of gratitude to the wonderful Lynda Haverstock. So Lynda, thank you very, very much.
Well,
to Lynda.
Thank you, aren't you kind? Thank you.
And continue to speak out, Lynda, and perhaps be involved in this upcoming coronation. And Clarice, well, first of all, I have to start with an apology to you, Clarice, because you acted many times as Emily Murphy in the various famous F5 plays and skits we did years ago. And so in the communications, I said that you were the model for Emily in Barbara Patterson's Women Are Persons Monuments here in Calgary and in Ottawa. But actually, you were the model for her Emily Carr statue, which she did a number of years later. And this is in Victoria on the grounds of the Hotel Empress, and just across from the BC legislature. And Clarice, or Emily, has all her animals around her. It's charming. So if you go to Victoria, visit Emily Carr and say thank you to Clarice. And so Clarice, I say to you today, thank you very much for your wonderful participation too.
Can I say thank you to Barbara Patterson, who did the sculptures? They were wonderful.
Of course.
And I just also want to say, please don't leave the Commonwealth, everybody that might be listening, because we need them. Yes. They're like our cousins.
But Clarice, we're going to evolve the royal anthem, aren't we? And we're going to sing, instead of long to reign over us, you and I invite others to sing words such as long to remain with us, long to grow old with us, long to evolve with us, but no more reigning over us. And one of the reasons this conversation went so smoothly was because of Janet Dirks. this award-winning journalist has obviously skills that have brought Canadians the important messages of the day. And then she's able to bring a charming conversation that covered key points for us to think about too. So Janet, I thank you very much on behalf of the Famous Five Foundation and all of us out here in TV or Zoom land. Thank you very much, Janet. To Janet.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you especially for your pink teacup. And before the three of the wonderful Canadians disappear, let's toast to the young people that we had on today, because Hannah and Mari asked fascinating questions. And our thanks also to Lynn McMurtry for bringing us a message from our sponsor, our presenting sponsor. So to Hannah, Mari, and Lynn, thank you very, very much. We encourage you to continue to feel equal to high and splendid braveries. And now, while I bring some Famous Five news, and before some Famous Five news, which includes, I hope you all have received a link to the Après Pink Tea, which we're going to have in just a few minutes after my brief report. Either check in your inbox to see, oh yeah, I see I got a link, or in the chat room and click on that just in 2 or 3 minutes, because we're so lucky. Janet, Lynda, and Clarice are going to join us for some question and answers and compliments. So my thanks to Janet, Clarice, and Lynda for a really enjoyable and informative virtual pink tea. So ladies, if you'd like to mute your mics or turn off your video, you're welcome to do so, because I would like very much to invite whomever is in Calgary or the Calgary area to come and visit us in person, just a few steps away from the Women Are Persons Monument, in the Fairmont Palace Hotel, in the Crystal Ballroom where Lynda spoke, and celebrate the 93rd anniversary of the Persons case. October 18th, 1929 is the date. We're celebrating it on Sunday, October the 16th, and tickets are still available. You'll meet some remarkable leaders in Calgary, female leaders in Calgary, including the former Lieutenant Governor, Lois Mitchell, as well 3 of our 5 fabulous 5. This is the 5 women that serve on the Calgary City Council will be in attendance too, plus other leaders from the arts, from business, from sports. So October 16th, a real in-person pink tea. Please join us. And if you're in Edmonton, the Famous Five are going to be there only for this weekend. So they're on the 5th floor of the legislature. So please do go visit them and say thank you and goodbye as they make their way to Ontario. And after October 18th, you can visit them in the Ontario legislature. We're not quite sure where specifically in Queen's Park they will be, but we'll be able to tell you that in just a little while. So that's in Toronto. Our next virtual pink tea is hopefully going to feature the women who have led the campaign to keep Canadians safe during the pandemic. So that will be November the 4th. So our last pink tea toast is to each and every one of us, because Canada needs each and every one of them. Canada particularly needs women's leadership. I don't want to end on a negative tone, but when we think of Hockey Canada, how much better it would be if there were more women involved. But each one of us has to accept that responsibility, has to recognize the leader within us and speak out, step forward, present ideas, take on responsibilities. So to each and every one of us, let's pay tribute to our leader, to our leadership. So shoulders back, deep breath, and in a strong, clear voice, say to yourself and to others, to me, I'm a leader too. So a toast, to me, I'm a leader too. So thank you very much, everybody, for being with us today. It was a fabulous Famous Five Friday. Thanks again to Her Honor Lynda Haverstock, to the amazing Clarice Siebens, and to the really impressive Linda Dirks, and everybody else who helped make this a wonderful event. And of course, to all of you who join us on a regular basis. We'll see you in November, on November 4th. So thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Lighten up your touch, unclench your hand, straighten up your spine, take command, open up your eyes, find your smile, ready, set, go, it's a brand new mile. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. Pull your shoulders back, lift your chin, take a breath, time to begin. Hold your head up high, feel the power flow. It's a brand new mile, ready, set, go. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. It's a brand new mile, a brand new day. Follow your heart and be on your way. Follow your heart.